On our last episode, we talked about beholders. We talked about what they are, how they think, how they reproduce, and more importantly, what powers they have. But today I want to focus on what kinds of beholders exist out there. Now, we delved into it a little bit before, but let's go a little bit deeper than that. First and foremost, let's talk about Death Tyrants. A Death Tyrant is a result of a beholder's dream where it contemplates its own mortality. It's essentially a dream of undeath holding true, where upon waking, the beholder's flesh rots away, leaving behind simply the skeletal figure of himself, with flying, shining orbs taking the form of its eyes. A beholder that transforms into a Death Tyrant retains much of its powers and magic upon changing, with one major difference. Instead of the anti-magical properties of its massive middle eye, a more sinister power awakens. A Death Tyrant's gaze has the ability to negate any recovery or healing whatsoever. This means that your skin stops regenerating, your muscles never stop aching, flowers stop blooming, the baby in your womb stops growing. The very essence of growth and recovery just stops. The positive energies that suffuses the very world just cease to exist in that specific spot. And when that something dies, it comes back different. An entity that dies while under the gaze of a Death Tyrant comes back as a zombie under the complete control of the beholder. This control, however, is far more powerful than any wizard's. You see, even an extremely powerful necromancer can only hold control of a certain number of skeletons or zombies at a time. Now, this number sometimes varies, from 16 zombies to maybe even a few hundreds in extremely rare cases. And even in those very extreme cases, the wizard must use its own magic to maintain control, a process that takes power and constant time. A Death Tyrant does not need to do any of that. Whatever creature falls under its gaze, it's forever bound to obedience, regardless of how many skeletons are already under the sway of the beholder, which means that an army of a few 100,000 under the servitude of a Death Tyrant is but an easy feat to accomplish. For encountering any true beholder, you should always be afraid of what it might throw at you. Its magical rays will undoubtedly be a problem for you, but their main gaze will always be the trickier problem. For you see, as beholders get created, there's a chance that they will be different. Yeah, beholders can change in color, skin style, mannerisms, hell, some might even form claws or appendages. But usually they will have the same powers, eye rays and that blasted anti-magical aura. Some beholders, however, get created differently. An example of this would be both the Eye of Flame and the Eye of Frost. Still considered to be true beholders, these two get created with pretty much the sole ability to create their corresponding element. Again, all you need to be considered a true beholder is the main eye, the floating sphere factor, and the 10 eye stalks. Everything else is pretty much up for grabs, including the actual abilities that they possess. In this case, for the Eye of Flame, is the ability to create fire. The Eye of Flame can produce extremely powerful rays of fire from its eye stalks, by losing its ability to pretty much do anything else. Now, it still retains the ability to produce a telekinetic power from its stalks, and some might even say the ability to create fear is still possible, but everything else is gone. On the other side, the Eye of Frost shares very similar features, of course, but on the side of ice. Now, not much is known about these Eye of Frost beholders, as they lair in places seldom visited by traditional folk, but it is said that they are covered in layers of ice that protect them from physical combat. But the Eye of Fire and the Eye of Frost possess the ability to weaken enemies against their element with the gaze of their middle eye. With the Eye of Fire's middle eye, removing any resistance to fire, and making things combust rather easy by just looking at them. And the Eye of Frost, making ice take hold rather exceptionally, almost obtaining the ability to petrify creatures with ice in a matter of seconds. As interesting as true beholders are, I find the most fascinating transformations are in the Beholderkin folder. These do not share many of the factors that make beholders, well, beholders, but are still created by beholders. They might even look the part, but have interesting, albeit unusual distortions, and let's go through a few of them. A death kiss might spawn from a beholder's dream that has to do with blood in one way or another, either because the beholder is dreaming of vampires or because it's dreaming of a long hard-fought battle against adventurers where the beholder was left bleeding profusely. A death kiss, instead of having eye stalks, it has tentacles with sharp teeth at their ends, which the death kiss uses to latch onto creatures with the purpose of absorbing their blood. You see, a death kiss sustains itself simply by absorbing blood from other creatures. This blood then is used to generate electrical energy inside of its body. This makes the death kiss extremely dangerous to fight with melee weapons, as the entire inside of their body is cursing with powerful electrical currents that will jolt any who pierces the skin. Instead of being paranoid about someone being out to get him, a death kiss becomes paranoid about simply dying out of hunger. Because of this, the life of a death kiss revolves around finding creatures to kill and absorb all the time. The lair of a death kiss will typically look like a graveyard of rodents and small animals, completely absorbed of their inner juices. Death kisses tend to retract their tentacles into their bodies and float like a levitating orb. This tends to surprise their enemies as they unleash their tentacles to attack, which makes it very difficult to tell exactly just how long their reach actually is before it's too late. Now, death kisses, however, lack a mouth, so instead they use the holes on their tentacles to speak, kind of like a throat of sorts. And those who have fought death kisses claim that their voice is somewhat nasal and high-pitched. When a beholder gets sick, sometimes they feverishly dream. In these dreams, the beholder loses his ability to think rationally, and its ideas get distorted and lose focus. Sometimes when this is the case, a gazer might spawn. A gazer resembles a very tiny version of the beholder that spawned it into existence, but only with 4 eye stalks. It'll then follow its creators afterwards like a pet, in a devoted but very aggressive manner. There are a few words that one can use to describe the mannerisms of a gazer, outside of annoying or nuisance. You see, gazers can't actually speak any languages, but they're very good at mimicking sounds. So what they do is they will annoyingly repeat whatever you say in a mocking tone, over and over again. Beholders are amused by this, however, and usually will keep the gazers as pets and company to clean their lair of rodents and small pests. Wizards have been actually known to be able to actually summon these creatures and make pacts with them as familiars, as unsavory as this might be to the wizard's companions. Spectators are considered to be Beholderkin, as in they are kind of beholder. However, it is believed that they're not actually spawned from the dreams of beholders. Instead, they come from another very far away and unknown place in the multiverse. Since they're not naturally made in the Prime world, then how do we even find them here? Well, spectators make for incredible guardians. They can be summoned thanks to a magical ritual that requires 4 beholder eye stalks, a magical ritual that binds the spectator to protect a specific location. The spectator is then bound by magic to protect said location for 101 years, only allowing you to enter said location or whoever else you designate. Unlike true beholders, spectators are very cordial and will usually converse with individuals who find them. However, said individuals will almost always find them to be crazy. Very rare will you find a spectator who retains its sanity after endless years of servitude, all alone in a dungeon guarding a treasure. Not everyone knows how to perform this summoning effectively, however, and those who screw up in the process might instead summon a Goth on accident, something that said wizard will seriously lament. Why? You see, a Goth is a hungry and tyrannical beholder-like creature, whose main object of sustenance is magic itself. It will consume as much magic as it can find, either loose magic from particularly powerful magical nodes, or straight from magical items. This makes them very dangerous because once a wizard starts attempting to summon a spectator, a Goth might sneak into the flawed connection and appear instead of the spectator. Now said Goth might pretend to be the Spectator, hoping to be said to guard a trove full of magical items, which of course it will consume and devour once the summoner is gone. Save that, the Goth might even attempt to fool the summoner into believing that he is actually a Beholder, since they can be fairly similar. However, there are a few easy ways of telling them apart. A Goth will have 4 of its eye stalks be tentacles instead of eyes. It will also have multiple eyes surrounding the middle central eye in fleshy cartilages. Once free to roam the world, however, the Goth will attempt to continue to consume magic as much as it can, since being starved from magic for a few weeks will send the Goth back into the realm from whence it came. Another interesting variation of the Beholder is what we call a Blood-Kissed Beholder. This is essentially a reanimated Beholder, twisted in shape by the necromantic magics used in the resurrection ritual. It has features very similar to that of the Death Kiss, except that it simply consumes blood as a method of defeating its enemies. For all intents and purposes, a Blood-Kissed Beholder is an undead creature and does not require food to survive. Much like the Death Kiss, however, it also possesses the ability to produce sound from its tentacles. However, instead of communicating, it can produce a high-pitched, deafening scream from its orifices that can daze all who hear it, and even produce damage on the brain by the sharp sounds. Now, that being said, it is also possible to simply reanimate a Beholder, much like how it used to be in life, all together with the eye rays and all, but that would just be boring, right? There is, however, one more Beholder-like transformation that I do want to talk about. Now, bear with me here. So far, we have found that arguably the most powerful type of Beholder is the Death Tyrant, but there might be more powerful variations out there that we don't even know about. But what could possibly defeat the most powerful Beholder? Well, I do have an answer for that. What about a Beholder that can manipulate the most powerful Beholder? What about a Beholder that can manipulate 20 of the so-called most powerful Beholders? See, this is where the Hive Mother Beholders come into play. These have the magical ability to enthrall and dominate other Beholders to do her bidding. But I want to talk about a specific transformation that not just possesses these powers, but might even be more powerful than that. The Overseers. This large mass of flesh, vaguely in the shape of a tree, even though it's not a floating head, even though it does not have a central eye, is very much still considered a special type of Beholder. You see, it possesses its eye stalks as sort of like branches in this gelatinous-like body, various mouths that cover the core of the bottom of the body, and tentacles to grab and attack those who dare get close. Overseers possess eye rays far more powerful than traditional Beholders, seemingly being able to create elemental rays such as lightning and freezing rays. It's incredibly resistant to magic, allowing the Overseer to simply deflect spells that are cast against it. Some say they even have the ability to create objects much like a Beholder does in its dreams, but at will. The full scope of this ability has never truly been seen. But most importantly, an Overseer has the ability to completely dominate and control up to 20 Beholders, forcing them to dance at the Overseer's tune. Imagine that for a moment. 20 Death Tyrants, each possessing thousands of zombies at their control, all working in cohesion with the Overseer, directing them as they take over the world. Oh, fear him now.